Good afternoon. It is my esteemed pleasure to welcome our panelists today, this afternoon, for the session organized by Globethics. The session is called Listen to Those Who Listen to the Earth, a plea for an urgent ethical blue framework by Indigenous populations and world religions. And with that, I hand over to Fadi Dao from Globethics.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for your presence with us, and thanks for all the speakers, the 4 speakers who accepted to join us in this session, which we will try to make it as participative and interactive as possible. So we have 75 minutes. We will spend maybe the 40 first minutes of half of our time to listen to our 4 panelists, speakers in 2 rounds. And then we will open the floor for further engagement with the audience. We will have, so this will make like 60, 65 minutes. And then we'll take 5 minutes to present some special publications that were prepared just for this event and for this scope. And we try to keep 5 to 10 minutes for informal engagement and discussions with the speaker and all together here. So thank you again. Welcome on behalf of so the FACE pavilions, the institutions behind this great initiatives at the COP28, and also on behalf of Globethics organizing this session. I would like to welcome our speakers. So Professor Nazila Ghaneya, who's a UN Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Religion and Belief. Welcome, Nadila, and thank you for also joining this discussion. Reverend James Bhagwan, who is Secretary General of the Pacific Conference of Churches. Thank you also, coming from Fiji, with strong engagement in this COP from the beginning of the COP, and you just told me this is the last engagement you are having before flying back. And we also have Professor Diki Sofyan, coming from Yogyakarta, Indonesia, who is a scholar in Islamic studies, but also very much engaged in environmental questions. Professor Diki is also the Council of Globethics in East Asia and member of the International Board of the Foundation. And I'm also very happy to introduce Keshwa Isaiah, coming from Kenya, representing many things. The young voices among us here, the youth, the indigenous Maasai community in Kenya, on the African continent, and also the dynamism of a young activists who have been also from the beginning of the COP here engaged in so many other activities. So thank you also, Keshwa, and welcome. Our topic, as it was introduced, and it is on the slide, entitled "Listen to Those Who Listen to the Earth." And we will try, in fact, to think together how we can make this happen, because the main, maybe, challenge of the COP or this type of policy dialogue and engagement is about the agenda. If the political or economic agenda are the ones that are shaping the outcomes of this type of events, I think we will still turning into the vicious circle. But if we can bring different alternative voices, so the voices of those who listen to the earth, who can really represent not only the interests of government, of companies, but also the interests, and even not only of people, but also the earth itself. So we can maybe be better prepared, I would say, to shape our future agendas for environment and for better environmental justice. And we will take as a case study, I would say, in the discussion, or specific case, the question of water. Because the question of water, if I look at the Pacific Island, for example, Fiji, it's a specific problem. If I look at the African continent and the drought challenge and issues for communities, another aspect of the problem, and we can look at it from very diverse perspective. In addition, you know how much water is such a strong symbol in most or all of religious traditions, religious and spiritual traditions. So let's start our first round of exchange and discussion with you, Nadila. And I'm sure that I'm not the only one here in this room curious to know, I mean, why Forbes would be interested in environment. So freedom of religion and belief, we are used to look at it in a very specific framework, and now combining it to the environmental question and environmental justice, this is definitely something very interesting. I'm sure that from the Forbes perspective and the parameters related to this engagement, there should be some very strong connection. So is Forbes something that can help to make environmental justice a real a reality, I mean, our life and in the religious communities? Or are you looking from the other perspective that the engagement for environmental justice will make communities more protected or less targeted because of their religious or belief thoughts and affiliation? Please.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Fadi. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you to the organizers, and thank you to all of you. I hope we have the chance for a good exchange. I would first like to acknowledge Special Rapporteur on Indigenous Peoples, Professor Khalid Sai, who is in the audience. So it is with his permission that I will be on this panel that also addresses Indigenous peoples, and I look forward to your feedback. We're one of around 55 Special Rapporteurs of the UN system. We are all independent experts tasked with taking forward a particular theme or country in an unpaid independent capacity. And we're appointed for some 6 years. We can communicate, have interactions with governments. We present thematic reports to the United Nations General Assembly and Human Rights Council. And we also can visit some countries to talk about freedom of religion or belief. This mandate has existed for some 37 years. And one of the priorities that I think is timely with this mandate is to try and mainstream and recognize freedom of religion or belief within broad contexts and real contexts, the local level everywhere in the world. And the freedom, of course, is for everybody, whatever their thought, conscience, religion, or belief. But I think this theme encouraged me to look a bit more deeper and go beyond my regular talking points and to reflect about water and spirituality, that we find that the Greeks held that everything is made of the 4 elements, one of them being water, that these elements have been fundamental to the traditions, the healing traditions of different cultures, including the Chinese and Tibetan traditions. There's a great oral poet from the 19th century, Uvavnuk, who's an Unuk oral poet, and she has said, "The great sea frees me, moves me, as a strong river carries a weed. Earth and her strong winds move me, take me away, and my soul is swept in joy." In other religious traditions, we find that water is used for baptism, that this water of life allows for a new birth and salvation, and enables one to enter God's kingdom. We find in other traditions that we have to empty ourselves in order to be able to receive the water of life, and that the crystal waters might resemble the purity of the heart and spirit, or symbolize true spirituality and therefore the divine. If I jump from that more profound, those more profound thoughts to the modern day and to human rights, then it took a long time for the right to water to be recognized. I remember being at one of the sessions of the United Nations where some governments were arguing that water is obvious, we don't need to recognize it as a right. And it was a struggle until indeed it was recognized as a human right. And it has been interpreted and expanded also by the Committee on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. So in recent decades, we have recognized that water is a public good, which is fundamental for life and health, that it is necessary for a life led in human dignity, and indeed it is a prerequisite for the enjoyment of a whole range of rights, including health, livelihood, food, housing. It's necessary for children, for farmers, for indigenous peoples, for women, for minorities, for refugees, the internally displaced, and detainees. So it was so obvious that we didn't recognize it until the last 20 years, but indeed it is essential and fundamental, as you know, the ancient Greeks and Chinese, etc., recognized. Human rights recognizes that the right to water must be adequate for human dignity, for life and health. It must be available to all, of a sufficient quality, and it must be accessible. It must be enjoyed in equality and without discrimination. It moves me to the third part, if I may, Fadi, that water has offered us, in the tradition of faiths, two pathways and two options. One, and regrettably, we can also reflect that impurity laws have been used to exclude, to assign certain populations to do the task of washing the dead and to collect the litter, and they've been assigned to that role, and not others. Intermarriage between different faiths has been discouraged because of the sense of purity. If I draw from a very recent example, just 7 years ago, the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, was asked about the following question, and he issued a fatwa in response. He was asked, many followers live near us and we enter each other's homes. These Baha'is show good morals. Are they najes or pure? Najes, it means ritually impure. And he answered, they are najes, they are ritually impure, and the enemies of your faith and religion. Therefore, my dear children, he says, seriously avoid them. So, purity, water has also been used for division, for exclusion and separation, not only for bringing us together. On the other hand, at the village level, at the local level, the well is where everybody goes. It's where we are equal, where we all sustain life, where we have the opportunity to encounter across faith divides. And so we have this opportunity as diverse faith communities to come together or to divide. So let me just end with saying that the challenge is in front of us, whether we recognize that water across time and across faith and traditions is an opportunity for unity, that we can see that it recognizes, offers us a seamless connection between the spiritual realms and the temporal. Indeed, maybe they're intertwined and we shouldn't see them as being separate. And it offers us as faith communities and non-faith communities to champion justice for each other and for all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nalila, for this first statement, I would say, on water and the symbolic force of water, either uniting people. I heard you more talking about unity in relation to either the similar tradition across different religions or for same needs, around the well and in the village, but also as a symbol of division when it comes to some religious also attitudes and statements. Thank you for this, and I now would like to ask you, James. You are coming from the Pacific Islands, but you also represent the churches in this important area of the world. We will come back later on the question of the role of churches in this engagement. But first of all, I would love to hear from you, your perspective. What would be the top priority to address now from a Pacific Islands perspective? And who are the top 2-3 stakeholders to engage in this scope? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the opportunity to be on this panel. Sorry, I've been here for 10 days now. I've been answering that question for 10 days. I've been fighting for that question for 10 days now. What are our top asks? Fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty. First and foremost, we need a phase-out of fossil fuel, a rapid phase-out of fossil fuel. Our Pacific churches have joined with our Pacific communities to say that Funds for adaptation and loss and damage are important, but without a phase out of fossil fuel, it's from a biblical point of view, 30 pieces of silver in terms of a betrayal of our Pacific people, or you can say it's blood money. You know, basically you're paying compensation for the death of our people. And as spiritual people, we die spiritually before we die physically. And I can share more about that maybe in the next question. But I think in the context of the ethical blue framework that you're talking about, I wonder if the team and the tech team can just put up the first slide that I have. I just wanted to give us something to look at apart from my face, because it's a very tired face. But this picture is the blue, although it doesn't look blue. This is our blue when we talk about blue. We talk about the ocean. The power of the ocean to transform. Often I say you take one breath from the trees and one breath from the seas, but we take a third breath from the Pacific because we provide a third of the oxygen that you breathe. Fish, because we are the food basket of the Pacific. 70% of the global catch from the Pacific, from the world, comes from the Pacific Ocean. And the birds that you see flying follow the currents in the air that are made by the currents in the ocean. And our ocean regulates the planet's currents. Regulates the currents, regulate the Earth's temperature. Yet we are continually finding in the context of a just transition, or the transition out of fossil fuel, the danger of what we call blue and green washing. So I'm very cautious of when anybody starts to use blue, green in the conversations. Green energy, what actually is green energy? Blue economy, blue this, blue that. We are the Pacific Ocean, 1/4 of the world's surface. When you look at a map, we're often so big that we're either in the middle, just looks like a big blue thing when you look at the planet, we are on the edges of the map. We are the reason why we call this planet the blue planet. Yet, in the rush for business, and as our concern is that if we transition from fossil fuel, that we don't just transition into another form of extractive industry, which is deep sea mining, which the science is not clear. Already we can see from modeling the impacts on the ocean. And we are urging a precautionary approach to things like deep sea mining. The reason I say all this and I talk about this is because the Pacific Ocean is central to our existence, and that to not just humanity, but for our Pacific culture, our spirituality, our identity ebbs and flows with the ocean's tides. It's part of our identity. We are deeply rooted to land, but we're also just as deeply anchored to the ocean. For us, the land starts in the mountains and goes all the way down to the seabed, you know. And we are people who, for thousands of years, traveled on the ocean long before GPS, long before Western discovery of our people. We were navigating using the stars. We were navigating using the temperature of the water. This is very much part of who we are, and we are very concerned that in a just transition, if a transition from fossil fuel is not just, we will be the final frontier of exploitation. So who are we needing to talk to? Well, we need to talk to the fossil fuel industry. We need to talk to those who are struggling to let go of profit. And we need to talk to those who need an ecological conversion away from putting profit ahead of lives and people. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, James. This is a very strong statement, and I deliberately asked you first to comment on this, and we'll come back to the more, I would say, faith-based question, but to mention we are in this beautiful place, in this spiritual tent, I mean the faith pavilion, but religious people are not just religious, are people also. And I strongly hear your position about how much it's part of your identity, the struggle, and not just a a theological or preaching way of saying, sharing your conviction, but it's about your being and the being of your people. So thank you for this strong statement, and we'll go back to also to this in the second round of the reflection. But now I will turn to my left and ask Diki. And you are coming from Indonesia. We are still in the same framework, I would say. I think Indonesia is the largest archipelago in the world, no, with 17,000 islands, depending on the level of the sea, probably, or the water. And you were telling me about those beautiful ceremonies of opening and closing of fishing, is also very traditional, very much rooted in the local culture. When we are here and in the COP in general discussing the climate issue, environmental justice, I'm wondering, and if you would like to answer, I mean, this question, what do you think is the missing piece in addressing the environmental crisis? I know that you are a scholar, you published on this question. I like very much your hardware software, and I let you, if you want to comment further on this. So there is something missing. What do you think, I mean, how we can address this?
Thank you very much, Fadi, for the question. Well, first of all, Indonesia is a vast archipelago with 17,000 islands in 3 different time zones. So if you imagine Indonesia being the sprawling archipelago from, let's say, London to almost Tehran, that's how vast our archipelago is. And of course, Indonesia is also known as a mega diversity, biodiversity country, especially if you look at the seas. In Raja Ampat in West Papua, you have probably the best diving spot in the whole entire world. I mean, I'm an advanced diver. I used to work for the Nature Conservancy, and I've dove there quite a few times. And there are, 75% of the coral species known to science is there. So you can just imagine the kind of the breadth of biodiversity there. And we have what's called a marine corridor, where a lot of the cetaceans, the dolphins, the whales, and the sharks would pass through there and reside in the waters of Indonesia, both in Southeast Sulawesi and West Papua and so on and so forth. We also have green turtles coming from East Kalimantan and traveling all the way through around the globe, and then coming back to East Kalimantan to die away there. In terms of this biodiversity, it's very much sort of also parallel to the kind of social cultural diversity that we have. We have close to 180 million people. And we have 6 major sort of religion, but most of the so-called world religions are there, including the Baha'is. And the government is committed to sort of protect all of the religions. But on top of that, you also have around 400 indigenous beliefs across the 17,000 islands. And so you see this great socio-cultural diversity, where you go, from one place and travel like 2 hours outside, and then you'll find, people with different psycho-linguistic, views and capabilities and beliefs and so on and so forth. Yeah. Now, one of the things that I found missing in sort of the body of literature on the environment is this idea of the hardware. So most of the discussions have primarily been based on what's called the hardware of ecological sustainability. So looking basically at the technical data sets, at the scientific discoveries on green technology and so on and so forth. And then the second layer is the software, and which is looking at the policy framework, the regulations, and the laws pertaining to ecological sustainability. But none has seriously looked at the hardware of ecological sustainability. And to me, this is like the elephant in the room. Yeah, the sort of invisible huge elephant in the room. And this pertains to the sort of individuated form of sort of belief and conviction to the environment based on our faith. Yeah? And we know that most of the religious traditions do have some form of commitment and care for the environment and love for nature. But yet we're seeing that that tradition has very much been lost. And if you look at the classic work of Lynn White, for instance, where White argues that the ecological crisis began with the theological crisis. Yeah? But I would go as far as to argue that it might not just be about the theology, but also the cosmology, the way we envision ourselves, the way we think where we come from, why we're here, and what our role is in this world, and then the theology, and then the eschatology part. It's how do we envision the world to end? And what kind of scenarios do we have? And I believe that almost all of our religious traditions do possess that kind of understanding. And even if you look at the indigenous beliefs, even the Mayan civilization had ideas about the end of the world, right? About Armageddon and all. And so I think we are missing quite a bit about how we look at the environment, how we treat planet Earth, and how we sort of envision how we would depart from this planet Earth. And so the other, of course, major argument is this sort of anthropocentric view of religion, saying that human beings are sort of the pinnacle of creation, that we are here to exploit, essentially, and hold dominion over all species on Earth. I mean, these are the kinds of theology that needs to be re-examined. But as I mentioned, I don't think just stopping at theology would be helpful, but looking also at the cosmology, about the beginning of time, and the theology and the eschatology, the end of time. And of course, from the Islamic perspective, we see a lot of these teachings as well, and traditions. Now, in some parts of Indonesia and also in some parts of the Philippines, and I'm sure there are also in the Pacific Islands, is that there is this ritual called sasi, yeah, which marks the opening and closing of the seas. In the far-flung archipelago of Batanes, in the northern tip of the Philippines, you would find a ritual called Mai Vanu Vanua, which literally means the opening up of the seas as well. And so this marks the beginning of the fishing season for these communities, for these largely indigenous communities. And I think we can learn a lot in terms of how we manage resources, natural resources. And I think the more studies we make on these kinds of rituals and festivities, I think the more understanding and more appreciation we'll have for indigenous beliefs and practices. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Diki, for reminding us how much the religious and the spiritual traditions brings this hardware to the discussion and has something to offer and to help in identifying the missing piece in the discussion, and also finishing by this indigenous also wisdom of engaging and of having this relation with the nature, with the sea, and how much I think we can learn from. And now, so I turn to Keshwe to continue on this. You, as I mentioned, you are young student activist. You came here from Kenya. You present, bringing with you the concerns of your community, the Maasai community, and your own experience, but also the concerns of younger generations also, because you would be much more, I think, unfortunately, paying the cost of what our generation and the one before brought as harm to our earth. So, and I saw how much you have been active here, and this is the fourth or fifth I think, contribution you are having, very active on social media. I'm wondering what you will bring back with you once you are back to your community. What would you tell them about? You will be back with some further hope, saying that you will tell your community, listen, there is something happening that is positive, we can build on it, or you have now more concerns based on your experience the last 10 days. What would you like to share with us?
Okay, thank you so much, Vadi, for having me at COP. This is my first COP, and I'm really learning and also interacting with different people and also engaging with at different panels and also discussion. First of all, this topic of the day reminds me of the Pope Francis' statement on the latest Laudate Deum letter that he said also, we really have to listen to those who listen to the art, listen to the cry of the poor. Let's listen to the cry of the marginalized and local communities. So I'm really glad to be at COP28 and also sharing the perspective on indigenous knowledge from the Maasai community. The Maasai have been on the front line for a quite long time, and also having the indigenous knowledge and also having the traditionals and also having the culture that has really sustained the biodiversity and also ecosystems around them. I'll be sharing more engagements when I go back to my village, because I've really learned that we really have to play a very big role, especially in engaging such kind of voices in the decision-making pools and also engagement pools. When I started my conservation journey, because I lived around Masai Mara, it's just a few kilometers, because my father used to be a local tour guide. So that's where I really learned about conservation and also all about biodiversity protection. So when I got into maybe advocacy level and also engaging projects in my community, I really learned something about the ecological drift that happened, because we had many people going to school, and also I realized that the indigenous knowledge is going to be eroded, and also the culture is really going to be shifted. So I decided that why am I forgetting the cultural roots that has really brought me up, and also that has really sustained the biodiversity within me. So that's how I started my advocacy on indigenous knowledge, and also trying to maybe show the world where the community cannot maybe able to show. For instance, we have those people who really have the wisdom, but they cannot manage to come to this COP28. But for me, I can really maybe speak in English, because for them, maybe they cannot speak in English. So I told myself I really have to stand out and also try to maybe amplify the voices, and also try to maybe show the world this kind of knowledge that maybe our father had, but they cannot manage maybe to get into such kind of platform. And with the urgent plea for the Blue Framework, I can really say where I come from, the issue of water is not that maybe so diverse, because we really have a lot of water issues, especially when it comes to maybe gender and also many disparities issues. We have women, for example, walking for a long distance in search of water. At the same time, they really have to juggle with their chores back at home. And also we have issues of migration. Young boys have to maybe move livestock from one region to another. And also earlier this year on March, for those who really watch the news, in Kenya there was a very prolonged drought that happened on March. Many livestock died, and many people have to move from one place to another for cattle. And also you find that it's really affecting many aspects: education, health, and also gender, and also maybe other many aspects. So many young people dropped out of school, and even earlier before, and even in 2007. So when I try to maybe flash back the moments that maybe even my brothers had to drop out of school so that they can really maybe migrate with livestock, and I managed to maybe go to school. So it really encouraged me to maybe trying to maybe share these stories to people, and also try to amplify to the world issues about water. Actually, most people come to Kenya, and when they see the first thing that maybe you encounter, maybe in Maasai places and also the regions, are issues of water. And also now, in that aspect, we also have the issue of maybe physical and also productive health across even people and also livestock, because people really have to depend on the water sources. And the source of water maybe comes from the streams, and also it's not tap water, so you have to share the same pool with livestock. So you have to rush in the morning to fetch water, so that by afternoon, when livestock come from the grazing land, they can really get time for them to get water. So from that perspective, also sharing all this, I can really say that there are a lot of, in terms of maybe the ethical framework to maybe cut across such issues from the communities like the Maasai, and also to maybe trying to maybe amplify the need for them to be involved. The last issue, the last statement that it can really amplify is the issue of indigenous and cultural knowledge. Basically, the indigenous people globally contribute to 80% of global biodiversity framework, but they really have a very small population of maybe 5%. And the wisdom that they really have, maybe I can really share from my previous experience. Our grandfather used to tell us stories. It was true storytelling that he used to pass the knowledge to us. And you find that the traditional knowledge really sustained, and also the biodiversity and also the streams alongside the community. The streams and also the rivers is a place whereby the community carry a lot of activities, like even the circumcisions. We have some cultural practices that are being done at these places like rivers, streams. So you find that lack of maybe such kind of urgent resources can really erode the culture and also the sustainability of the community at large.
Thank you for this very rich testimony, I would say. And what I find very beautiful is you show us and young people like you from your community or other indigenous communities that you don't need to choose today between belonging to your tradition and community and also owning, I would say, the tools of a modern life and education and language and advocacy. And this is extremely important to preserve this knowledge that you mentioned, Kashwe. So thank you. I will change a bit the order. And I think I will go first to James and Dicky to go back to the more theological question and then ask you, Nadila, to comment. Because and we have less time now. I would ask for each speaker take 2 minutes. I mean, brief answer. But James first. So you represent the churches also. You are Secretary General of the Conference of Pacific. So churches. What are the churches in the Pacific area are doing? I mean, I see you are here, so you are doing something also in the name of the churches. And what can they do more? What should be more done in collaboration among religions, maybe, and other communities from an interreligious perspective? What would be in a different way to put it, your message to the faith pavilion and to the institutions behind these initiatives also?
Thank you. I think it's an exercise in futility if you ask a theological question to be answered in 2 minutes. Never give a theologian a microphone. But I just want to go back to the comment you made about this being a tent, a faith, the faith pavilion as a tent. In fact, it's interesting because I actually pitched my faith tent at the Pacific Pavilion. And that's where I've been spending most of my time doing my pastoral work. So the way in which Pacific churches have approached the issue of climate change, as we approach all of our issues, or whether it's self-determination, whether it's gender justice, child justice, etc., youth empowerment, has been what we call the prophetic, the pastoral, and the practical. So beginning with advocacy, our prophetic voice, or the prophetic voice of the church in the area of climate justice, has very much been connected to ecological stewardship, recognizing that as Pacific Christians, we've recognized very strongly that we are part of creation. We are not above it or apart from it. We can have that understanding from an indigenous perspective, indigenous spirituality and Christian spirituality, that we are part of God's creation, and that we are more than just stewards, we are actually guardians of it. And so that leads to areas around ecological ethics. And I mentioned earlier the ecological conversion. This was an interesting conversation we had with the foreign minister and minister of environment for Colombia, when they shared why they joined the Fossil Fuel Non-Proliferation Treaty. They talked about the ecological conversion that they were experiencing at a political level. So recognizing that, we're accompanying our people in spiritually and pastorally in the context of climate-induced disasters, climate change, climate-induced displacement and relocation, people who are deeply rooted to land and ocean, having to be removed from that land, and the disappearance of things of culturally spiritual significance. So in the context of my friend sitting next to me, how does that impact their right to practice faith? Yeah. Right? How does climate change impact their right to practice faith? Because we're seeing the disappearance of those aspects, the spiritual and cultural trauma that they experience, and the lack of that understanding when we talk about non-economic loss and damage. So bringing that into the climate space. And from the practical perspectives, really regarding the rethinking, the reweaving that we need to do in terms of removing those toxic strands of unsustainable development and extractive industry that have brought us to where we are today. I'll leave it there and then we can come back later. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, James. And thanks for bringing back also again this concept of ecological conversion. Interesting, I think. So from an Islamic perspective, from an Islamic theological perspective, Diki, what you would like to add, how you can at the same time give roots to this claim for further environmental justice in the Islamic tradition, and what this tradition can say today to the current situation.
Thank you very much. I think this is a very timely and contextual question. One, I think there is no doubt and that there is not much of debate in terms of what we are supposed to do on this planet. I think the idea of stewardship, Khalifa fil Ard, I think the idea of stewardship on this planet is very much sort of non-debatable and is accepted, except that I think the understanding and the implications of what that actually means has a lot of implications in terms of our actions and inactions. If you look at the more sort of progressive tafsirs or the exegesis of the Quran, you do find sort of ways and means to sort of look at nature very differently. Yeah, one is to look at how, for instance, the Quran talks about the personalities of ecosystems, yeah, of the mountains, of the seas, of the rivers. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of allegories being said, in the Islamic scripture. But then consider the notion of al-Jannah, paradise. I mean, on numerous occasions, the Quran speaks of the al-Jannah as wilderness, right? Al-Jannatu adnin tajri min tahtiha al-anhar, right? Where river flows, where you have a lot of trees and you have low-hanging fruits. I mean, this is a depiction of wilderness to me. And so, for all of the Muslims out there, vying for paradise, this mythical paradise somewhere out there, it's strange that you're destroying the paradise on earth, the wilderness and the forestry on earth to achieve the mythical paradise where it's clearly described as a wilderness. Thank you.
That's a very strong statement. So how sometimes in the name of the eschatological or mythical paradise, we can destroy the paradise that we have here in our hands. So thank you for this. So how would you like to comment on this? Because I was thinking, James, for example, mentioned this spiritual trauma also when people lose what they need to live their spiritual experience. I was thinking the linkage between environmental issues and migration nowadays. But with this spiritual trauma or with this capacity of destroying our current paradise, how would you see it from a right perspective and freedom perspective for the communities? In brief.
Of course, I will be brief. Thank you. I think everybody, the distinguished co-panelists, have all reminded us of readjusting our relationships and our perspectives, isn't it? And one of them is our relationship with the material. Are we exhausting it? Are we, taking it from others? Are we destroying the earth for our greed? Or are we going to be moderate and thoughtful and allowing it to sustain for future generations? But also, I think our relationship with the spiritual matters. So this mandate looks at thought, conscience, and religion. People can self-define. We can't judge others as to sort of saying, well, that's a syncretic belief, or they're not really believers because they hold their belief in this manner. So it took 36 years before the mandate had a report that looks at indigenous peoples and freedom of religion or belief. It had been mentioned in previous reports. But then in this report, my predecessor rightly says that sustainable living, sustainability was also held by indigenous peoples. Yet here we are judging whether indigenous peoples' spiritual perspectives and worldviews fit into our categories of religion or not. But who are we to categorize and to exclude others?
Wonderful. Thank you, Nadila. So, Keshaway, so what you would like to add, especially from your community's experience in dealing with water, in offering an example of harmony with the nature, what you would like to add as a message for all of us here? Try now.
Okay. First of all, I want to maybe emphasize on the issue of maybe the knowledge and also the connection with nature, especially by the Maasai people. A few years ago, we had a lot of issues concerning the companies and also corporations coming and also trying to maybe introduce some companies around the village and also around the place. So I can really emphasize maybe the issue of first of all, maybe I can dwell into how this community has been really contributing maybe to such kind of maybe support and also the ecological connection with nature. So I can say that the issue of land alienation and also eviction has been really a problem because you find that at some point most of the communities are being evicted, and this also happened in Tanzania. For those who maybe had the issue of the Maasai in Tanzania, and from your information, the first original maybe homeland of the Maasai people was in Tanzania before even they came to Kenya. So there was that split between the Maasai people in Kenya and Tanzania. So those in Tanzania were like left behind people of the Maasai tribe. So I can say that I think the world should really recognize the critical role of these people, especially the Maasai and also other indigenous communities from the other countries. They can really play a big role, especially in cultural and also especially in the knowledge and wisdom, and especially in the decision-making pools and also decision-making policy-making pools. I want to maybe emphasize on the faith approach, because we really have also the leadership aspect in our community, whereby you find that you cannot just come maybe and do something without even consulting the leaders and also without consulting the community. So I really love the aspect whereby if you come, for example, maybe in Kenya right now, we have the leadership team. But now you find that due to the aspects of maybe the climate change, biodiversity decline, you find that even the leadership system has been really maybe distracted, because everything maybe that has been happening, especially in terms of maybe water issues and maybe migration and all that, the leadership system has already maybe declined also. I also want to indulge into the issue of ceremonies and also the issues of cultural things that happen within this ecosystem. And also, I wish the world will also try to feel and also trying to maybe take a picture of maybe, for example, I was hearing someone in the indigenous pavilion saying that we should even have one of the COP at the indigenous maybe lands and also maybe somewhere where we can really go and see how these people are really doing. So I can also maybe emphasize on the issue of maybe people should really use a different eye of maybe viewing or even seeing on how these people really interrogate with nature and how they can really also maybe engage them and also bring them closer.
Wonderful. Yeah. I like very much this invitation to host a COP on an indigenous land. I mean, so to be able to see, to put ourselves in your shoes and to see from this very specific perspective. Thank you, Kashfi, for your input. We have the chance, as it was mentioned, for the presence among us of the Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous People. So, Francisco, I would like to start by asking you if you would like to give the first feedback on what we heard here. In 2-3 minutes, I will hand you my mic, and then we will open the floor for further discussions. Okay, so it seems we cannot have two special rapporteurs at the same time, so we need to, we only have one seat for a special rapporteur. So 2-3 minutes, your feedback on this?
Yeah, I think that I can add something about modern indigenous peoples, because what I've been hearing here is what we can say indigenous people have been creating in the past, their cosmovision, their cosmology, and everything. And that's why many times people don't understand when indigenous people are saying, this is sacred. But it's not sacred because it's going to come and making miracles. For example, in my town, I am coming from Guatemala, I am Cachiquel Mayan. I remember about 10 years ago, my people told the mayor, please don't cut that tree. It's a sacred tree. It's giving us water. And the mayor said, oh, you are ignorant and everything, and he cut it. The water disappeared. And everybody was saying, oh, there was a miracle tree. No, the thing is that our mountains are rain, mountains, how do you say that? Cloud mountains, I believe it is called, where there is the rain is captured by the trees. Yeah? But it was a very old tree. So, and the other thing is also, I was remembering now that I was sitting hearing all of you, I've been enjoying hearing you here. 2001, there was an elder, a Navajo elder, Roberta Blackgoat. Some of you, I know that some of you know her or you have been hearing her name. She was saying in United Nations, in an environment conference, look, what you are doing is you are killing Mother Earth. When you are taking the coal out of the earth, it's like you are taking away the liver of a human being. And everybody was saying, oh, she's crazy, she's an old woman. And she said, no, I am not crazy, I am not an old woman. Go back to your home and look in your water filter. What is in your water filter? And you will find a piece of coal in your water filter. Because the coal, what is doing to Mother Earth is purifying everything that is coming to the surface of the earth. So that is, and now people are believing that is religion. No, it's not a religion. Indigenous people are more, we can say, as you say in your poster here, people that are hearing Mother Earth. And at least one suggestion that I wanted to give you now that I have been seeing this, we are not indigenous populations. We are indigenous peoples. Yeah? And I saw that you are talking about indigenous population. I just noticed when I was watching there. So, and when I hear that you are going to publish something, I say, okay, now it's time to tell you that please don't use indigenous populations. Indigenous population ended in 2007 when the Declaration of Indigenous Peoples' Rights was adopted by the United Nations. So that is my reflection on what I have been hearing here. And please, Nancy, come back here.
Thank you, Francesco. Thank you very much for complementing also the views and adding to our discussion those remarks. We have limited time, but I want absolutely to also give you the floor. So whoever would like to ask a question, please raise your hand. I will hand you also the mic because we need to hear you on the also for those who are following us on live streaming. So it's the moment also to say thank you for all those who are following us online. So we'll start here, but with a very specific demand to be very brief to allow others also to share their questions and comments. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I come from the Zoroastrian tradition, and I feel that Zoroastrianism does have an answer to climate control, which has not been discussed so far, because Zoroastrianism really is a very unknown theology to most human beings. What I would like to say is that we have a creation story in which we believe that the forces of good and evil. Anything in excess, anything in deficiency is seen as the temporary triumph of evil. And therefore, exploitation of the planet, climate control, all these issues fall into the category of something which is evil. Our creation story also promises that if human beings generate the right words and deeds, then at the end of time, evil will run out of business. Evil eventually will be inoperative. And when evil is inoperative, the renovation of the world will take place. Because we believe that Ahura Mazda, the Lord of Wisdom, created the world in a perfect state. We believe in the 7 creations of the skies, waters, earth, plant, human beings, and fire. And that has been mucked up by the spirit of evil that has got into human beings. So if human beings use their right knowledge based upon their mind, based upon truth, based upon sovereignty, devotion, piety, perfection, immortality, then the renovation of the world is possible. And I think if people looked at Zoroastrianism at a theological level, they may come to some very interesting resolutions and answers.
Thank you so much for this invitation to all believers to defeat evil. I mean, so I saw hand, yes, behind, please.
Good afternoon. I'm Karina from Kenya. And I was so excited when I heard you talking about the trees. I'm a teacher by profession, and I'm using my skills to write books in local languages, in Kiswahili, to teach about trees planting. So my message to Faith Pavilion is that let's us continue giving back to nature and also shining our light. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So, do we have questions, please?
Thank you so much. I'm Reverend Nick Talubale from the Organization of African Instituted Churches. Thank you to you all. I think, excuse me, I have a hoarse voice, but the issue is we are working for the whole human family. But the question is, how do a small group of the human family come together and block the livelihoods, the well-being, the dreams, the future of everybody, even in this COP? That is a huge spiritual, moral question. The indigenous peoples, smallholder farmers, fishing communities, everybody around, young people, children, there is a moral question here to COP28. For how long are the interests of the small group of people going to control the world? It's a major question. Thank you.
Okay, we'll try to then, while concluding, give you the opportunity to comment on all what we are hearing as comments and questions, please.
Thank you so much. This is Yusuf. I'm from Iraq, and I'm here under the capacity of Mercy Corps, international organization. So, like in Iraq, we have diversity of religious and like minorities and ethnicities. Like one of the religious minorities, they call it the Sabian or As-Sabi'ah in Arabic. They practice their ritual in a flowing water, and the reason why it's a flowing water because the flowing water, it's for them, it means life. So cutting the water, it means you cut the life. So the Sabian are concentrated in south of Iraq, in a city called Basra, where there are a lot of oil mining is happening there in Iraq. And the practice currently is that the oil companies, they are just throwing the wastewater, polluted with oil, in water body. It's called Shatt al-Arab, or the Arab Sea. And they specifically practice their rituals in Shatt al-Arab, in Arab Sea. And they are facing a lot of skin diseases, like anesthesial diseases. And this is faith. No one can tell them to stop until we clean the water. It is faith. It's something innegotiable. So from my perspective, I would really recommend here that in the next COP, or maybe in the remaining days of COP, it's very important that we lean on religious and non-religious people to mainstream the impact of climate change on religious rituals, because we need to expand the call to broader audience, to influence policymakers, to influence private sector, forward for action, because I'm seeing like in the corner here, like we should inspire action, and the action inspiration should come from here. Thank you.
The floor back to our panelists with less than 2 minutes, 1 minute and a half for each. So, and we'll start in the other way around now. So we'll start with you, Kashwi. So the honor is for the young people now. You heard some comments, you heard the other panelists, speakers. What you would like to add, to give your comments on this?
Yeah, I would like to conclude by saying that let us work accordingly to listen to those who listen to today's topic, because we really have a lot of issues concerning these communities, and also especially when it's come to maybe the carbon offset projects. Right now, like 2 months ago in Kenya, we had a secret, or even I can say something revealed that most of the lands of the communities have been taken away, like even 6 years before. And you find these companies coming, and also the corporations coming with a nature-based approach, but now with false solutions. So I can urge, let us just amplify our voices, and also let us use the best approach when we approach such kind of communities, and also let us seek the best consultation before even maybe implementing something at the grassroots level of such community, because when you take away land from them, when you take away such kind of resources from them, they only depend on them for their livelihood. So I can say that let us listen to what they say, and also let us respect to where they live, and also let us involve them in policy and also decision-making pools, and also maybe in terms of maybe young voices from such kind of regions, I can say also let us maybe brought them on decision-making pools, and also maybe at the tables. And I really appreciate Globethics for ensuring that I'm at COP28, and for the support and everything. And lastly, maybe I can thank all of you for coming to listen to us, and also maybe I'll be having I have this bag here. This bag is being made by the women in my community, whereby an initiative that we run in our village. So they make this bag, and also we sell to support also their livelihood, and also what we do with this organization here, we partner with them. It's called Spring of Arid and Semi-Arid. So it's, if you really wish to maybe support, you can really purchase. I have some here, so it's a good bag here.
Bravo,
So,
bravo.
yeah. So we make sure that these women are also empowered, because they don't have jobs to do. They don't have anything to do. Maybe they only have the artwork. They have the talent, the skills that they haven't go to school to learn. So they know how to make beads. So we really also support them with the initiative, making sure that they also support their livelihood. So if you
Thank you, Keshwe. And I want to tell you, it's much more beautiful than my Swiss bag here. So
thank you.
I'm the first client. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Dicky.
Yeah, I'd like to take up the issue of rituals. I think, in all religions and indigenous beliefs and practices, you do find rituals, but I find that religious people have a deficiency in really, truly understanding what these rituals mean. So there's sort of meaninglessness in the rituals that we do. If you look at the body of knowledge on rituals, you'll find that there's very specific sort of, the primary function of rituals. And one of them is that rituals make our lives more bearable. Why? Because we can escape and enter into a sacred time and sacred place and sacred history. And I think we are missing that whole piece, you see. I mean, the gentleman from Basra, for instance, there's a lot of rituals in Basra, like the Karbala, for instance, right? Which brings you to a, sacred time and place, 1,400 years ago, where Imam Hussein was decapitated, right, by the oppressors. So that's the function of rituals. And I think when we do our rituals, oftentimes we forget what this function of ritual means and how that should make us transcend into understanding why, for instance, in our wudu, in our ablution, we use flowing water, right? and why do we pray and prostrate to the ground, right? And I think most of us, when we do these practices, we tend not to want to know why we are doing the things that we do. So I think the more we educate ourselves on rituals, I think the more understanding and meaning we will have and how to connect that with our real life.
Thank you. James, your comment, your feedback.
I think I'm going to answer that question, try to answer that question, but incorporate some of the reflections on what we've heard. We are in an ecological crisis because we're in a moral and spiritual crisis. We talk about ecology, we talk about economics, we talk about ecumenism, but we forget that all comes from the oikos, the household. And we have disconnected ourselves. We have severed that sacred cord that bound all these things together. And we need to reweave that sacred cord. I think the other issue from the context of indigenous people is the sacredness that is placed on biodiversity. So our people have a sacred tree, a sacred animal, a sacred fish, etc. And that is related to the role that plays in the biodiversity of that community. And so, as we look to move forward, we always say in the Pacific, you travel backwards into the future. Because you can only go forward if you look back and see where you're coming from. And that's the importance that indigenous spiritualities and guidance provides for us. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Nazila.
I just wanted to recall that...
It's working? Okay.
I just wanted to recall that, of course, matters of conscience and commitment to nature are not exclusive to those who are theists or religious. There are also those who hold climate change and responsibility towards nature who are atheists and agnostic. So I just wanted to recall that. But then also really appreciate learning more from you about how integral nature and faith is, and that they're not separate boxes. They're one and the same. And I think a lot of the problems now is that we classify and separate rather than bring together and unite. I wanted to take from my sister here the idea that whenever we have an interfaith dialogue, let's have some interfaith action. And I think if every interfaith dialogue resulted in the planting of one or several trees, we would be in a far better place and our connection would be deeper as well. And thirdly, that we shouldn't instrumentalize religion. You know, we don't appreciate indigenous peoples just because they teach us about the wisdom of living sustainably. Indigenous peoples have their own worth and value and dignity and belonging, and we can also learn from them. So similarly, religion has a role and a positive contribution to make to our dialogues. It's not only when we need them that we fish them out, we select them, we put them in a corner under a tent, and then we use them whenever we need them. And I think faith is also not only about the past. Of course, it explains a lot and helps us draw from the past, but it's also about the future. And one thing we should think about is how to reimagine also COPs and climate dialogue so that not only are we consulted, not only are people consulted, but we reimagine a world where, yes, states are there, but they're not the primary voices or quite so central and exclusive in our decision-making. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nazila. That's a marvelous way to conclude this discussion. But before thanking our speakers and also our hosts here, I would like to say that we have a... Okay, the pointer, now it's working. So I have a gift for you because at Globethics we have a publication house and we worked very hard, our team worked very hard the latest weeks to gather most of the statements, interfaith statements and indigenous statements on environmental justice. Those books are available online for free. I will now show you the QR. You can just scan the QR and download them. And there will be a third book on faith-based also statements. In addition to that, we published Blue Ethics, a full study on the question of water, with also some recommendations translated in many languages, English, French, Chinese, Arabic, the latest one. And so some hard copies are available here while you are going out, but also all those books, you can download them through this QR. So scan the QR while I'm thanking our speaker, panelists. Thank you so much. It was so rich. And I would like also to thank very much the Muslim Council of Elders, the United Nations Environmental Program, PARD, and all the partners in this initiative organizing the Faith Pavilion. And I think it's a real breakthrough that will, I'm sure, impact the future COPs also and the whole dialogue on environment and environmental justice. Thank you all. Thanks for those who followed us and will watch this online. And we will continue this reflection and this engagement for better environmental justice for all. Thanks.
Thank you, Fadi. Thank you, everybody. Very appreciative for this compelling and immensely important discussion today. So thank you all for your time. We will take a 15-minute break now and reconvene at the top of